Have you ever noticed how some women seem to have a magnetic pull, not because of how they look, but because of how they carry themselves? The kind of woman who walks into a room and suddenly the energy shifts. Men can't quite explain it, they just feel it. It's not desperation, it's not a performance, it's an energy, a quiet confidence that whispers, "I don't chase, I attract." That's the kind of woman every man remembers. That's the kind of woman who becomes unforgettable, not because she plays games, but because she understands the psychology of connection and the feminine power that most people have forgotten how to use. And that's exactly what we're diving into today. The psychological hidden tricks that make a man obsessed with you. But before you roll your eyes and think this is about manipulation, it's not. This isn't about pretending to be someone else or following empty rules. It's about learning how to embody a version of yourself that's so emotionally magnetic, he can't help but think about you because you awaken something in him that no one else does. This is feminine psychology, decoded, modernized, and built for women who are done being the ones who always care more. So before we start, take a breath. Let go of the need to control how a man feels about you. This is about you, how you feel about yourself, how you move through the world, how you command energy without ever begging for it. If that resonates with you, stay with me till the very end. You're going to see love, attraction, and even yourself differently after this. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, because this space is for women who are ready to rise back into their power without losing their softness. 1. The law of emotional imprint. Every woman leaves a mark, but not every woman leaves a memory. What separates the women men remember from the ones they forget isn't beauty or charm. It's emotional imprint. It's how she makes him feel. Here's the secret most people never tell you. When a man thinks he's obsessed with you, what he's actually addicted to is how he feels when he's around you. The feminine energy that makes him feel alive, safe, and seen at the same time. Think of it this way. When you're anxious, when you're constantly trying to prove your worth, or when you chase his validation, the emotional imprint you leave behind is one of tension. He associates you with anxiety, not peace. With confusion, not desire. But when you know who you are, when you show up calm, grounded, playful, he starts to connect that feeling of ease and attraction to you. You become the emotional environment he craves. And here's the twist. The less you try to make him feel something, the more powerful your imprint becomes. Because feminine energy doesn't chase. It invites. It's magnetic. Psychologists call this affective conditioning, the process by which someone starts associating a particular emotion with a specific person. Think about the smell of a childhood home, or the song that instantly takes you back to a memory. That's imprinting. So ask yourself, when he thinks of me, what does he feel? Calm or chaos? Freedom or pressure? Warmth or confusion? This is not about being perfect. It's about being intentional. Because your emotional state is the atmosphere you create. When you learn to regulate your emotions, to hold your own peace no matter what he does, you become the woman whose energy he can't stop returning to. Think of Cleopatra. History painted her as a seductress, but her real power wasn't in her looks. It was in her emotional intelligence. She made men feel like kings in her presence, but she was always the one in control of the atmosphere. That's emotional imprint. When you master this, you don't have to fight for attention. You become unforgettable simply because your energy feels like home. 2. The mystery of selective availability. Let's talk about the feminine art that modern dating has almost killed: selective availability. We live in a culture that tells women to be available, to respond instantly, to show interest so men don't lose interest. But in doing that, so many women have forgotten the ancient rhythm of attraction, the dance between presence and absence. Here's the truth. Obsession doesn't grow in constant contact. It grows in contrast. In the moments of quiet after he's heard your laughter, in the space where his mind starts to wonder what you're doing, who you're with, and why he suddenly misses your energy. When you're too available, emotionally, physically, or energetically, he never gets the chance to feel your absence. And without absence, there's no longing. Without longing, there's no desire. Psychology backs this up. It's called the scarcity principle. We place higher value on things we perceive as rare or hard to obtain. But here's the key difference between healthy mystery and manipulation. You're not withholding affection. You're curating your energy. You know when to give, and you know when to pull back. Men fall for women who know how to leave space. Space for curiosity, space for imagination, space for him to reach out. And before anyone mistakes this for playing games, it's not. It's about balance. It's about knowing that your time, your energy, your attention are sacred. Not everyone gets unlimited access to you. Imagine yourself as the queen archetype. She doesn't chase anyone around the castle. People come to her. They earn her attention, not because she's arrogant, but because she knows her worth, and her worth demands presence. When you live from that energy, you stop being afraid of losing him. You realize that if someone drifts away just because you gave them space, they were never strong enough to meet you where you stand. You want a man who feels your absence like a silence he can't ignore. One who respects your boundaries, not because you begged him to, but because your energy commands it. So here's a question to sit with. Do you fill every silence just to feel secure, or can you let the silence speak for you? Feminine power isn't about always being seen. It's about being felt, even when you're not there. When you practice selective availability, you create emotional polarity. You give him something rare, the chance to miss you. And that's where obsession begins, in the space between your last word and his next thought of you. When you truly embody that balance, warmth with boundaries, openness with self-respect, you start to notice a shift. You stop texting first just to check if he cares. You stop explaining your value, hoping he'll finally see it. You simply are. And in that quiet confidence, something beautiful happens. Men start to feel that they could lose you. Not because you're cold, but because you're whole. Because you have a life, a sense of purpose, and a self-esteem that doesn't depend on anyone's attention. That's the paradox of feminine magnetism. The more you prioritize yourself, the more he becomes drawn to you. Because deep down, every healthy man craves a woman who doesn't need him to breathe, but chooses him to share her air. 3. The mirror effect. You've probably heard people say, you attract what you are. It sounds cliche until you live it. Men don't fall for what you say you want to be. They fall for the energy you embody right now. Because in relationships, people act like mirrors. A man's energy will often reflect back what you unconsciously believe about yourself. If deep down you feel unworthy, unseen, or afraid of abandonment, you'll attract men who confirm those fears. Not because the universe is cruel, but because your energy is broadcasting that frequency. But when you shift, when you start radiating self-worth instead of seeking it, everything changes. The kind of men who once drained you start falling away, and the ones who can meet your energy start appearing. Psychologically, this is called projection. We don't see people as they are. We see them through the lens of our own self-concept. That's why self-awareness is the most seductive thing a woman can ever master. Think of the feminine archetype of the sage. Wise, grounded, emotionally mature. She doesn't chase. She observes. She understands that everything a man does around her is information. If he pulls away, she doesn't panic. She reads the data. She adjusts her mirror, her energy, not her worth. When you show up with inner peace, confidence, and emotional stability, you become a mirror that reflects a man's best self back to him. That's the secret. Not manipulation, but reflection. Men become addicted to the women who make them feel like better versions of themselves. Not through praise or performance, but through the calm presence that holds space for them to rise. So here's your reflection question. What are you currently mirroring? Are you reflecting your worth or your wounds? Every interaction with a man is an energetic feedback loop. Change your inner state and the mirror shifts. That's not magic. That's emotional physics. 4. The power of emotional contrast. Here's something most women don't realize. Consistency doesn't make a man obsessed. Contrast does. Think of your favorite song. Why do you love it? Because it has rhythm, highs and lows, tension and release. If it were one flat note from beginning to end, you'd get bored fast. Attraction works the same way. Emotional contrast is the subtle art of creating depth, the feeling that being around you is a journey, not a routine. This doesn't mean drama or chaos. It means emotional texture. You're not always predictable. You can be nurturing one moment and teasing the next. You can be vulnerable, but also mysterious. You're multidimensional. A woman who knows how to create emotional contrast awakens a man's nervous system in the best way. She keeps him mentally and emotionally engaged. His brain starts associating you with excitement, warmth, and curiosity, the emotional equivalent of a beautiful roller coaster he never wants to get off. But here's the danger. If you confuse contrast with instability, you create anxiety instead of attraction. The key is control. You know when to bring intensity, and you know when to soften. You know when to express emotion, and when to pull back into stillness. In psychological terms, this triggers what's known as the dopamine cycle. The human brain releases dopamine, the feel-good chemical, in anticipation of reward, not just in the reward itself. When a man never quite knows what emotional flavor you'll bring next, but he knows it will be authentic, he starts craving that experience. That's why emotionally dynamic women are unforgettable. Not because they're loud or dramatic, but because they feel alive. Think about Marilyn Monroe. Everyone remembers her as seductive, but her true magic was in her emotional contrast. She could be playful and innocent, then suddenly deep and introspective. People couldn't look away. Ask yourself, have I become emotionally predictable? Do I always show one version of myself, the pleaser, the caretaker, the strong one? Or do I allow all my shades to be seen? When you embrace your emotional contrast, light and dark, tenderness and strength, you become the kind of woman who makes life more vivid. And men don't forget vivid women. 5. The serenity of detachment. This one might sting a little, but it's the truth that separates women who constantly chase love from those who naturally attract it. Detachment is not indifference, it's emotional discipline. It's the quiet confidence of knowing that you can want someone deeply without needing them to define your worth. In today's world, people confuse connection with control. They think if they can just say the right thing, text at the right time, play the right strategy, they can make someone stay. But that's not attraction. That's anxiety disguised as effort. When you master detachment, you become a woman who moves from choice, not fear. You know that your happiness, your peace, and your identity are not up for negotiation. In psychology, this concept ties to secure attachment. It's the ability to love fully while still remaining emotionally independent. A securely attached woman doesn't lose herself in love. She expands within it. Imagine the archetype of the queen again. She loves deeply, but if someone leaves, she doesn't collapse. The throne remains hers because her kingdom, her life, is full with or without him. That's detachment. Men feel this energy instantly. They can sense when a woman's calm comes from genuine self-worth versus pretense. And the irony? The more detached you become from needing him, the more he becomes drawn to you. Because your energy says, I choose you, but I don't need you to breathe. That kind of emotional freedom drives men wild. Not because you're unavailable, but because you're uncontrollable. And that's rare. Detachment is power disguised as peace. It's the moment you stop reacting and start responding. It's the point where your boundaries become quiet declarations, no longer defenses, just facts. And here's a truth that few people have the courage to accept. If you have to beg for consistency, you've already given away your power. The woman who practices detachment doesn't beg, she decides. She knows that her energy is too precious to waste on convincing someone to stay. Ask yourself honestly, am I choosing from love or from fear of being alone? Because the moment you choose yourself, something shifts. Your energy recalibrates. You start attracting people who are drawn to your peace, not your panic. In a world full of people begging for attention, the woman who can sit still, unattached, and confident in her own worth becomes magnetic by default. And that's the paradox of obsession. It doesn't come from chasing, it comes from calmness. When you stop trying to make someone want you, you give them space to feel you, to wonder about you, to crave the energy that you radiate without effort. effort, because real feminine power isn't loud. It's subtle. It doesn't announce itself, it invites. It doesn't fight for attention, it commands it simply by being. 6. The vulnerability paradox. In a world where everyone's wearing armor, vulnerability is rebellion. It's not weakness, it's truth. And truth is magnetic. When you dare to be real, to express your feelings without shame, to speak your truth without manipulating outcomes, you create an emotional intimacy that most people are too afraid to offer. Men are biologically wired to protect and connect, but they can only do that with a woman who gives them something real to connect to. Here's what's fascinating. Studies in psychology show that emotional transparency creates oxytocin, the bonding hormone, but vulnerability only creates attraction when it's anchored in strength. There's a difference between saying, "I'm scared you'll leave me," and saying, "Part of me feels afraid because I care deeply." The first is fear without ownership. The second is emotional truth with confidence. That subtle shift from panic to presence changes everything. It turns vulnerability into power. Think of it like this: masculine energy respects emotional honesty, but it resists emotional dependence. When you show vulnerability from a place of self-awareness, you make him feel trusted, not trapped. He sees your depth, but also your stability. In literature, women like Elizabeth Bennet from Pride and Prejudice embodied this energy perfectly. She was vulnerable in her emotions, but never desperate. She spoke her truth, but always from self-respect. That's the vulnerability paradox. Openness that invites, not weakness that repels. Ask yourself, do I express my truth or do I perform my pain? Because men don't fall for the woman who hides her heart, they fall for the woman who can show it with courage. Real vulnerability is not oversharing or proving your sensitivity. It's the calm confidence to say, "This is who I am, I feel deeply, and I'm not ashamed of it." That level of honesty is rare, and rarity is the foundation of obsession. 7. The feminine aura of unpredictability. Now, let's talk about the final layer, the one that turns intrigue into infatuation, unpredictability. Not the chaotic kind that confuses people, but the graceful unpredictability that makes you endlessly fascinating. When a woman knows who she is, she becomes a universe of contrasts, soft yet strong, kind yet firm, mysterious yet open. That's what keeps a man's attention, because the male brain is wired to seek challenge. It craves novelty. It's drawn to mystery. And when you combine grounded emotional stability with just enough unpredictability, you become unforgettable. Imagine being the woman he can't quite predict. Not because you're inconsistent, but because you're alive. You surprise him, you inspire him, you make him laugh when he expects you to be serious, or you challenge him gently when he's used to women agreeing with him. You disrupt the pattern, but with grace. This is what I call the feminine aura. It's the subtle, magnetic unpredictability that keeps him leaning in, curious, and emotionally engaged. In modern dating, many women lose this because they overexpose themselves too soon. They share everything, reveal everything, explain everything. There's no space left for imagination. But when you hold a little mystery, when you let your life, your energy, your interests exist beyond him, you create depth. He starts to realize that loving you is an adventure, not a routine. And that's what keeps a man obsessed. Not control, not perfection, but the feeling that you're limitless, that no matter how well he knows you, there's always more to discover. The psychologist Esther Perel calls this the erotic tension of distance, the balance between intimacy and individuality. It's what keeps passion alive long term. When a man feels that you belong to yourself first, that your world doesn't orbit around him, his respect and desire both rise. So ask yourself, have I become too predictable? Too available? Too easy to read? If you want to reignite your feminine mystery, start by reconnecting with yourself. Pursue things that light you up even when no one is watching. Dress for yourself. Dance alone. Learn something new. Surprise yourself. Because the woman who surprises herself keeps everyone else intrigued by default. Your unpredictability doesn't come from trying to be mysterious. It comes from being alive, fully, passionately, authentically. And when you reach that point, when you stop trying to be the woman he wants and start being the woman you are, you'll realize the truth. Men don't obsess over perfection. They obsess over aliveness, over energy, over women who feel like life itself. There's a reason why some women seem impossible to forget. It's not their beauty or even their words, it's their energy. They understand psychology not as a weapon, but as awareness. They know how to be soft without being weak, and strong without being cold. When you master emotional imprint, selective availability, mirroring, contrast, detachment, vulnerability, and unpredictability, you're not learning tricks. You're returning to your natural essence. Because real feminine power doesn't chase, it inspires. It doesn't beg, it attracts. It doesn't fight for attention. It becomes the kind of presence that lingers in the mind long after you've left the room. If this message spoke to your heart, make sure you subscribe, not just for more videos, but to stay in the energy of women who are rising in self-worth, wisdom, and grace. Because this is your time to stop performing and start embodying. The truth is simple. You don't need to make him obsessed. You just need to remember who you are, and the rest will follow.